Welcome, 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 everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Davina, Becoming an Overcomer, where we explore topics about stress, loneliness, grief, and we provide encouragement to support our listeners. So, if you haven't met me yet, my name is Davina McLean Randall, and I am the founder of A Caring Voice for You. So, what is A Caring Voice for You? I'm glad you asked. A Caring Voice for You is a nationwide phone-based service offering support to anyone going through life's ups and downs. So we have things, if you have things that you're going through and you want to know what to do, we're here for you. We're here to support you. You can always reach out to us at caringvoiceforyou.com. Whether you're in need of a support group, one-on-one coaching, or just someone to listen to you when you're going through something, we're here to help. So feel free to just check us out at caringvoiceforyou.com. So today I am honored to welcome Toni Lashaun Wortherly, a multi-talented artist from Jacksonville, Florida. Toni is a dynamic songwriter, accomplished author. She is an engaging speaker and a dedicated educator. Her life is deeply rooted in her faith in Jesus Christ, and she uses her gifts to spread hope and encouragement through music, writing, and speaking. She is passionate about supporting girls, women, focusing on mental health and wellness, navigating singleness, and redefining life after divorce. With a heart for ministry, she is authentically sharing the love of Jesus with humanity and integrity. And I just want to put this plug in. If you haven't heard her music yet, you guys need to check her out because she is absolutely amazing. So, Toni, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited that you're here, and I appreciate you for even just agreeing to come on. Can you share with the audience just a little bit about yourself so they can get to know you?
Like you said, my name is Toni Lashaun Wortherly. My stage name when I'm performing is Toni Lashaun. I have been singing for as long as I can remember. And I grew up in high school. I started doing theater, where I learned to sing more, went to college. And when in college, I joined an a cappella group and a gospel choir. So singing has always been a passion of mine. But practically speaking, growing up, I wanted to be an attorney. So I went to law school and did follow that whole path. And then halfway through law school, realized that is not what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So I practiced law for a few years, and then I had to kind of pivot and figure out what I was going to do that would use the education and the gifts that God has given me. And I found education and I became a high school teacher. I actually teach high school at my alma mater, and I teach in a classroom that I spent most of my time in when I was in high school. So God really, I have so many stories, but God really brought me to like a full circle moment. And if he had told me that I would be where I am, I wouldn't have believed him when I was in high school. It really has worked out. It's worked out so well, and it's one of those things where you just have to trust God. And now I know why he only gives us little parts of his plan, because if he said you're not going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a teacher, that probably would have really hurt my feelings and freaked me out when I was younger. But it's all worked out so that I can have a career where I can give back to the community really that raised me. And I'm able to do the other things that I like to do because of my schedule with my career as a teacher. I'm able to use my downtime, my off time to work on music and to write and to just pursue ministry opportunities. So the last, I guess, year and a half, I've been really, really focused and honing in on speaking out more. I've been doing podcast interviews. I've done a couple of speaking engagements because I'm very, very passionate about mental wellness. And I've gone through my own struggles with mental health challenges throughout my life. So I decided to stop hiding that and really speak out so that people can kind of put a face to what a person with mental health challenges looks like and understand that they're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone, you can't really, when you look at mental health, their faces are like mine, like yours, like anyone, because we all have things that we're going through. And often, if you just look at a person, you have no clue. You have no idea as you're maybe in a grocery store and a shopping center, what people are going through and, what they have going on in their lives. So thank you for sharing that. So you mentioned your music. I absolutely love your song, Don't You Worry. That's one of the songs that I just listened to a little while ago, and it resonated with me. It gave me a lot of, I don't know, strength. And I truly believe the words that you spoke in there were definitely connected with scripture. And
Mhm.
I love that. I love that. With your song, I can say maybe it's become an anthem of hope or just something that people can really listen to who are facing mental health challenges or just life in general. What inspired you to kind of write it, and what do you feel would be like the greatest impact that you hope your listeners will receive from, well, not only Don't You Worry, but all of your music?
Don't worry, that is one of the songs that was one of the earliest songs that I wrote. I did a little like poetry and some like funny parody type songs when I was in high school. I wrote Don't You Worry in 2003 after I graduated from law school. And I was trying to figure out, since I didn't want to be a lawyer, what I was going to do with my life. While I was in law school, about a year and a half in, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, which the diagnosis was like a gift and a curse at the same time. It was a gift because it helped me to realize that like I wasn't strange and that I couldn't help some of the things that I was facing because of just the way that my brain and my body are made up. But at the same time, it was a diagnosis. Like you have a mental health issue, and so there was that kind of stigma attached to it to where I hid it from a lot of people. There were a lot of people that had no idea that I had any kind of anxiety disorder. I made sure that like my mom knew or like my roommate knew because I was on medication for a while in case something weird happened with my medication, but I really hid it from a lot of people for a very long time. And so like growing up, I always was like a worry wart. That's the name that people call me, like, but not like a normal, ordinary worry wart. Like I share with people when I was 3 years old, there was like a storm going outside. And I just talked to my mom about this recently. She was like, it wasn't even a hurricane or anything. Like it was just a regular, like Florida afternoon storm. And I thought our house was gonna like blow over and cave. Like I completely just like lost it. That's one of my earliest memories is of thinking that our house was going to fall in on us or our house was going to flood. And I was like 3 years old.
Wow.
And as I got older, depending on what was going on in my life at the time, it would get worse. So when I was in college and I was away from my family, I it got really, really bad to the point where I started having panic attacks. I just didn't know it was called panic attacks until much later. Looking back, I was like, oh, I was having panic attacks. I thought I was having like little heart attacks. But the crazy part about all of that is that I would just lay in my bed and like let it pass. I wouldn't tell anybody. I wouldn't tell my roommate, my boyfriend, my mom. Like I didn't tell anybody what was going on. So when I got to law school, I was married when I went in. I got a divorce after my first year of law school. It was law school. There was a lot of stress, like just all kinds of things. And I just started having all of these like catastrophic thoughts about like little things. So I went to therapy, and in going to therapy was talking to my therapist, and I told him about one incident with a friend of mine. I had a friend who was supposed to meet me somewhere and they didn't meet me. And I ended up calling that person like over 50 times because I was panicked about them being dead or in the hospital or whatever. Like I would literally like an out of body experience was just like dialing and dialing and dialing and dialing. And my friend was not happy with me and called me crazy. And so I went back to my therapist and I was like, okay, is this crazy? Because like it felt normal to me. Like I'm just checking on you to make sure that you're okay. Because I literally think that you're like lying in a ditch somewhere and you're dead or you're in a hospital or like all of these like really dark and heavy thoughts were just took over me. And at that point, my therapist was like, I'm going to have to refer you to a psychotherapist because I think I know what is going on with you, but they have to make that diagnosis. So that's how the diagnosis came about. But because that was my kind of trajectory in life, that like seemingly normal things would happen, but my brain would take them to the extreme. Philippians 4:6 was a scripture that haunted me for most of my life because it said, be anxious for nothing. And I was anxious all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so not only was I living with this anxiety, but I was also, because I got saved when I was really young, I grew up in the church. I was living with this shame and guilt that I was letting God down every single day because I was worried all the time. So that's when I say, like, my diagnosis helped because it was like, okay, I'm worried, but I can't help it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in this moment, like, that's how my brain processes things. And God knows how He made me. So
Right.
that was helpful in a sense. But at the same time, there was just that stigma of like, I have a mental health issue and people are going to think, like my friend called me, that I'm crazy. So I didn't want to share that with anybody. And, and it was a struggle because I was like, God, why would you make me like, why would you make me like this? Like, it's hard. It's hard to explain it to people. It's hard for people to understand unless they've actually gone through it. And so when I wrote Don't You Worry, it was, like I said, in a time of my life, big transition and change. That's one of the things that triggered, I will say triggered, because I have been through extensive therapy, my anxiety. And so at that point in my life, it was like I was studying for the bar, knowing that I wasn't going to practice law for very long, but I had to practice law. I had to figure out how I was going to practice law, but not get too entrenched in it that I couldn't get out of it. I had to
Mm-hmm.
figure out what my next step was behind that, how I was going to make money. I was living with my parents. It was a lot of things going on all at once. And so that's how that song kind of came about. I kind of broke down that verse because it was a verse, like I said, that haunted me. And I really went to God about it and was like, okay, what is this? What does this really mean? Be anxious for nothing? Like nothing.
Yes.
Like, we're all anxious about something. Like, and you know
At
that
one
because you
time,
made
yes,
us.
we all
Like,
have it. Yes.
we all have anxiety, and here I am with this like diagnosed disorder that means my anxiety has a longer duration and more intensity than like normal anxiety. So that's how that song came about, and it kind of went through ebbs and flows. It really started out as just like a poem because it was just lyrics, and then in 2012, my grandmother passed away in 2011, and I sang at her funeral. One of my cousins was like, okay, so what are you doing with that voice that God gave you? And that was like convicting. So over the next like 6 months, I bought a guitar and tried to teach myself how to play guitar and try to put some music to some of the songs that I had written. So I picked up Don't You Worry again and started putting chords to it and seeing if I could make a melody with it. And then I found through one of my coworkers a producer locally. And we actually made like the very first version of the song was like a summery pop, like kind of boppy hit, like,
Mm-hmm.
like song. And I put it on YouTube and it really resonated with people. So in 2020, I was sharing this with you earlier. So in 2020, on today, February 3rd, 2020, my grandfather passed away. And then, like, 1 month later, the whole world shut down for COVID. And so, between his passing and the world shutting down for COVID, and lots of changes going on in how I was expected to do my job, and more people that I knew passing away, and none of them were COVID related. It was like just a bunch of people that I was close to, none COVID related, that passed away in a very short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
I went into like a depression, and I never really was like, everything happened so fast that I never really got to grieve my grandfather's death. And then I didn't allow myself to grieve the other deaths because I felt like there were other people who deserved to grieve those people more than I did. So I had this just profound sadness going on and depression going on. And I didn't know until I went to therapy last year that that was exacerbating my anxiety. But at the time, I was just trying to survive and get through. And so I wrote the song Strength to Soar about a year after my grandfather passed away. I was like, okay, it's time to snap out of this. So I was like, I got to get back to writing. I got to get back to the stuff that makes me feel like me. And I wrote the song Strength to Soar, and I had my friend produce a track for it. I was just going to sing it at my church.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't planning on recording. As a writer, I just wanted to be just that. I just wanted to write. I wanted to write for other people. I'll sing some of my songs at my church,
Mm-hmm.
or if I get invited to another church, but outside of that, like I just wanted to be behind the scenes. And I sang that song at my church. It was in like April of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And just the feeling of the weight being lifted, not just off of me, but off of the people who heard me sing.
Mm-hmm.
There was like a tangible feeling of the weight that was being lifted while that song was being sung. Like, again, another like almost out of body experience. Like I could see it. Like people needed something to hang on to. They needed some hope. So I was like, all right, Jared, I'm going to put out one single. I'm going to record one song, and that's it. It's going to be Strength to Soar, and I'm going to record that, and then I'm done. And he was like, sure. So I went to record it with him. I went to Nashville, visited, hung out with some of my songwriting friends, and wrote some music, and I recorded the song. When I got back from Nashville, after I told my mom like all the fun stuff that I did, she's like, okay, now that you're home, I got to tell you that Miss Mary passed away. I was like, are you kidding me? And she had passed away that Thursday, and I got home on a Saturday. But my mom was like, I didn't want to mess up your trip. I didn't want to ruin your trip. So I wanted to wait till you got back and you were settled before I told you. So Miss Mary was like my surrogate grandma after my grandmother passed away. And she actually passed away on the day I was recording this song. So that was like a lot to take.
So just that's a lot. So you went through a lot of loss. You went through a lot of, I guess, in a sense, loss within yourself, just knowing about the diagnosis and coming to grips with your life shifting and changing, and realizing what your plans that you have for yourself were not the plans that the Lord had for you. So, with everything that you have dealt with and gone through, can you share with the audience what were some things that you could take from your experiences and share with everyone? How did you get through it? Like, what were some of the key things that you did to help get from point A to point B? Because so many people, they have the mental health diagnoses, they have losing family members and friends, or getting unexpected news when they're in the middle of something that's happening. What were some strategies or things that helped you just kind of overcome or get through those times that were the hardest in your life?
So it took me a while to get to this place, but eventually I went to therapy. I started going to therapy towards the end of 2023. I had tried to do therapy during the pandemic, and I had a really bad experience with the therapist. And I was like, I'm not doing therapy. Like, I was like, nope, never again. And then I started struggling with insomnia, which caused anxiety to be even worse because I wasn't sleeping. And it was just like this big cycle. And so one day I was driving towards my mom's house, and I was on the phone with her, and I just like lost it. Like I just started just like raging. And my mom said, you need to go to therapy. And my mom is like my best friend, but she also, like I told you, she waited until I got home to tell me like bad news. She also is like very careful about what she says and how she says it to me. When she point blank said to me, like, this has gone on long enough, you need to go see a therapist, I was like, okay, that is not just her telling me that. That is the Holy Spirit using her to tell me I have got to do something about this. It's gone too far. So I tell people all the time, I am a big advocate for Jesus and therapy. When you ask, how did I get through? How did I overcome? First and foremost, my relationship with Christ. Like, that is what kept me alive. Like, there's a Kurt Carr song, I almost gave up.
Mm-hmm.
I almost let go. I almost let go a lot of times. Like, I literally didn't want to be here anymore. Almost let go. And so it was my relationship with Christ. It was my relationship with my family. When I released my EP, I told them, I was like, there were times when I said I didn't want to be here, but I thought about my 7 nieces and nephews, and that, like, I was like, I can't do that to them. I don't know why I didn't think about my parents and my siblings, but like, I can't do that to them. I can't take TT away from them, like, and obviously my parents or my siblings or my students or anybody else either, but they were the ones that always came to mind first.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I know that, like, that was the Holy Spirit bringing them to mind. Like, you do have something to live for. Cause like you said, my life that was like 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago at 45, my life looked nothing like what I envisioned my life looking at 45. Like, according to my plan, I was supposed to be a lawyer. I was supposed to be a wife. I was supposed to be a mom. I was supposed to have a whole different life. And so I finally, like, settled in and said, okay, I'm going to get a therapist. And I gave my requirements for a therapist to the program that we have through my work, and they matched me up with a therapist. And I went in the first session. He said to me, if you're trying to get rid of the parts that you don't like, I'm not the therapist for you. But if you want to actually work through and figure out how to deal with the parts of yourself that you don't like, then we can do some more. And that was because, honestly, when I went in that first appointment, I was like, before this appointment is over, I'm gonna need you to write me a script so that I can go to the drugstore and go back on medication and just, like, numb it away. Like, just not feel it and just not feel, period. Like, that is what I wanted. And he said that to me, and I was like, so you won't be writing me a prescription? Okay.
You know what? You bring up some really good points because sometimes it takes a couple of times for us to get comfortable with different therapists. The first one may not be right for you, but it's important to keep going. Don't give up, because just like we may not like, I don't know, I'm just give you an example of going into the grocery store. We may not like the way a certain product look if we're looking for fruits or vegetables, but someone else may. So just like, everyone is different, everyone's unique, you may connect and mesh well with one therapist, whereas another one, you may say, absolutely not. So it's important, if you're listening, please keep going. If you feel like therapy is something that you need to kind of connect and find, but you're not just quite comfortable with the individuals that you met just yet, keep going, don't stop. But keep going, Toni, please share.
Oh, yeah, no, that if you ask my sister happens to be a therapist, they would be like, they probably would be like, I don't know why she kept going back to him, because I complained about him every single time I got done with my therapy appointment. I either called my mom or my sister or both of them, and I was like, I cannot believe what he just said to me. Like, I was going off. And my sister, because that is her background, she was like, oh, this is so good. Oh, he's good. Oh, I like him. And I was like, fine, I'll keep going. But it was not easy. And that's another thing that people, like, therapy is not something where, like, you go and, like, you go to one session or you go to 2 sessions and, like, okay, like, all of a sudden I'm better. Like, it's hard work, and you got to go when you don't feel like going, and you got to push through and do the work when you don't feel like doing the work. It's not an easy task to stare yourself in the mirror and to see the most raw and, like, ugliest parts of yourself, and to face that and to commit to change,
Yeah.
because change is scary and difficult and weird, but if you keep doing what you always did, you're always going to get what you always got. So you have to make some kind of change somewhere in your routine, in your life, in the things that you're doing so that you can have a different outcome. And like with him for the first time, I actually had a breakthrough with the anxiety. Like I actually got like a, for lack of a better word, formula for
Yes.
dealing with my anxiety, which had been a struggle. I loved my one therapist that I had when I was in law school. Like I loved him because he, like Dr. Moskowitz, they spoke to me very bluntly and very plainly, and they did not try to coddle me, which is what I asked for. Because I tell people all the time, I'm a very smart person. If you give me an inch, I will take a mile and you will not even realize. And those two therapists like did not give me an inch. They did not give me the wiggle room. They called me out on my stuff. And that was what I needed. That might not be for somebody else, but that's what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't need somebody to like, it's okay and like pet me. Like, no, I needed somebody to be like, you have the ability to change. You're just not doing it. That's what I needed. Somebody was in your face. Did I complain about it every single time? Yes, I did. But also
But
I realized that it was helping.
and it's worth it. So it's good that you're just being raw and real about that, because yes, it's a lot of work going to therapy. Yes, it's uncomfortable and it has all these, just not so good feelings when you go. But if you work through it and you're committed to it, it will be so worth it. And I think from what you shared, your life is a testament, and your how you have overcome so much is a true testament of how to kind of persevere and get through those tough times so that you can see yourself, vision yourself the way that you want to be, and actually get to that point. And I think that's, in a sense, what you're sharing with our audience. You had to, sometimes climb over that mountain. Sometimes the mountain is a lot higher than we want to climb, but if you get to that top point and catapult over like what you did, you will see the goodness of everything that you fought so hard for.
It was amazing to me to have someone be able to tell me like what was at the root of all of it. And it was something I never would have been able to pinpoint for myself. And so that's why I'm such a big advocate for therapy, because we're so, I don't know what it is within us that makes us so ready to just try to handle things on our own and be afraid to be like a burden on someone else or whatever the case may be. But it took an outside person who was not a family member, who was not a friend, who was not my pastor, to be able to say, this is the issue. Because I couldn't pinpoint what the issue was. I just thought, I'm broken and there's nothing that can fix me except maybe some medicine. Like, I just thought I was broken. And he was able to listen, and he was able to say, here's what happened. You had your grandfather pass away. You had someone who was like your grandmother pass away. You had your mom's best friend pass away. One of your closest friends' husbands pass away. You are 45. You are unmarried. You do not have children. You are in a career you never envisioned yourself in. And you have never once allowed yourself to grieve any of that. I was like, you right. I was like, because like, and my comeback was, because what's the point of being sad about it? Like, it's the reality. This is my life. And I don't want to be ungrateful. And God has given me a great life. It's not the life I thought I would have, but it's a great life.
Mm-hmm.
I am generally a healthy person. I am able to pay my bills. I have a loving family. I have a lot of things that a lot of people wish they had. So what right do I have to be sad? Like, yes, my grandfather passed away, but he was my grandfather. My mom and her siblings are the ones that get to be sad about that. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't, like, I wasn't his child. I was his grandchild, Miss Mary passed away. Yes, but she had siblings and nephews and nieces. I was just like a church friend, an outside friend. Like, I don't get to be sad about that. Like, there's somebody closer to all these people. What do I look like taking the time to be sad about that? Okay, I don't have a husband. I don't have kids, but I have a good life. How can I be so ungrateful to be like,
Mhm.
this sucks that I don't have these things that I want in my life? You know what I'm saying? And so like
Yeah.
I held all that in, and guess how it came out? It came out as anxiety, it came out as depression, it came out as anger, and it came out as insomnia. And I was, and apologies to all the people who were around me during that time period, a not nice person to be around.
But the thing that I hear, and the best thing that I hear, is that you got to the root. You got to the root of it, and you were able to persevere, figure it out, and overcome to the point where you feel comfortable. Like things are moving along at a pace where you're like, all right, Lord, where are you leading me now? You can focus in on your music. You can sleep. You can do all the things um, that you want to. And you're coming along. So that's something that I think shows that you progressed and that you overcame so many different obstacles and challenges in your life, although they were hard. So I want to just check in with you and ask you a couple of things because you touched upon so much and just is very real with the audience. So for those who feel overwhelmed by life challenges, like many of what you described, and you talked about ways that you overcame some things, but can you share just some practical steps on things that people may be able to do to begin to prioritize like their mental wellness or their emotional well-being? I know you talked about your faith. You talked about just going to therapy. And for me, what helps me when I'm going through struggles and real struggles in life is I listen to music. I know music is your thing. You sing. I sing. I can't really sing, but I will sing and I'll dance in my kitchen and I'll do what I need to do to kind of get out those moments when I'm struggling with whatever comes my way through praise and worship. So, what are some things that you can share with the audience that help you? Just some real concrete moments of, if something is not going right in your life and you're like, you know what, today is a struggle, but this is what I'm going to do to get through the day. Do you have any suggestions for the audience?
So I kind of like boiled down everything that I learned in therapy to like a 3-step method for when I'm having a struggle.
All right, I love that. I love that. 3 steps. All right, what are they? I'm
So
interested.
the first thing, this is all like based on anxiety, but really you can plug in whatever the emotion is that you're feeling, whatever the bad feeling is that you're feeling. But number one, which was the absolute hardest thing for me to do, so I had to figure out how to do that before I get to the other steps, is listen to your anxiety. Okay. My therapist would often say to me, "What are you thinking?" And I would say, "You don't want to know." Because when I'm in an anxious spiral, the darkness that comes into this mind is ridiculous. But that's exactly what I learned. The darkness that came into my mind was ridiculous. Like nothing that my mind ever made up that was going to happen actually happened. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would be so caught up in, oh my gosh, this could happen. Oh my gosh, this could happen. Oh my gosh, this could happen. I never really took the time to actually like listen and go, wait a minute. None of that actually happened. You said this was going to happen, didn't happen. You said this was going to happen, didn't happen. Nothing that bad happened. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And coming to that realization of, oh my gosh, I have to actually listen to what my brain is saying. Because my brain is very creative in the best and worst ways. But when I look at all the bad scenarios that my brain can come up with, she hasn't been right. Not one time. Not one time. So I can confront the lie that is trying to build itself up in my head with the truth of this is not going to happen because this is not going to happen because, right? The truth for me a lot comes from scripture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you are not going to be completely abandoned. You are never completely left out. Why? Because you're a child of God and he's never going to leave you or forsake you. Like if everyone in your world disappeared. You still have God and he still got you, which is much more important. Okay. Like he's got you, you
Yeah.
know? So that was the first step, was like, you have to actually listen to it. It took me several sessions before I would actually admit to him the thoughts that were actually happening in my head, because I didn't want to say them out loud. That's how scary some of the things were that were in my head. The second thing was to learn from the anxiety. So once I actually got those thoughts out, he was like, okay, so why do you think that's going to happen? Like, you know, it's not going to happen. But what is it that's going on in your world that is causing your brain to think these scenarios? Like, it's pointing to a place where you're hurting. It's pointing to the thing that you are actually afraid of. And so those were like my main fears were exclusion and abandonment. Like just feeling like I was being left out and left behind by people who passed away, by my nephews and nieces growing up and becoming adults and not needing me anymore. Just like all these things, that it was a pain point, and like the anxiety was covering up that pain with all this ridiculousness. So I was caught up in the ridiculousness and not dealing with the pain. And, you know, there's like a physical equivalent to that too. Like a lot of times when we're in pain, we have a headache and, you know, we'll take Tylenol or Advil or whatever to make the pain go away without stopping to think what was actually making my head hurt. Was I hungry? Do I need to go to the chiropractor? Did I not get enough rest? Because the thing is, if you don't deal with what the root cause is, it's just going to come back and you'll just be taking some more pills in a few hours to fix it. Right.
Right.
So you have to actually try to figure out what it is that's causing from it, learn from that feeling and deal with the root issue behind that feeling. And then not just deal with it and be like, okay, moved on, my headache's gone, blah, blah. I can go on with my life. Like actually notice, like, did the Tylenol work? Did the Advil work? Did I have to keep taking it? Or did I have to take it and eat something? Or did I have to go to the chiropractor? Or did I have to, you know, like what really resolved the problem? Not just the immediate solution that we took so we could be comfortable. Yeah. So listen to your feelings, your anxiety, learn from your feelings, your anxiety. And then the last thing is to help you limit it, which is the things that you were talking about. I have 2 G's, gratitude and grounding. And the other day I wrote something that just kind of came out. I want to choose gratitude over griping. Sometimes I hear myself and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're annoying with all this complaining. Now I know why God felt like he did with the Israelites in the wilderness. Like come on, get off of it. You know, do we talk about our problems more than we pray about them?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yes, you shouldn't hold things in. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying hold things in. What I am saying is let things out, but have a realistic perspective and find the things to be grateful for in that. Right?
Yeah.
Back years ago when I was looking at, you know, being single and being childless, like it was a struggle because I was like, I don't know why this is what my life looks like right now. So I'm like, I have to find something to be grateful for. And the thing that I found to be grateful for was, one, time, and two, that I get to make my own decisions and I don't have to ask anybody else about anything that I
Yeah.
do. I don't have to get anyone else's approval. If I want to go here, I go here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to make arrangements. Well, I have to make arrangements for my cat. But like, other than that, as long as I have somebody to come feed my cat, like I can go where I need to go on a moment's notice. I can do what I need to do. You know, I can spend the money that I need to spend without feeling like I'm taking from my kids' college fund. Like I can you know, I can make decisions on like a moment's notice. I have a level of independence and freedom. You know, and so I came to that realization. Like I was watching a reality show about the artists when Mary had their show, and like all of the stuff and things that they had to do to coordinate with their families so they could go on tour, so they could make an album, so they could do this, so they could do, and I was like, you know, I don't have to do any of this. Like I don't have to So in a way, it's like helpful. And that helped for a while. And then I was like, okay, this is getting old. Like I would like somebody to share all this stuff with. But that will come in God's good timing. But gratitude, like
Yes.
find something to be grateful for. And then like if you're actually in the midst of panic attack, anxiety attack, hyperventilating, find a grounding technique that works for you, that you could do if no one else was around. I've had to learn this for people that I care for and love. I've had to learn how to do this for my students when they're in. That's another point of gratitude. Like if I hadn't gone through what I've been through, I wouldn't be able to notice when my students are going through it. Like if
Wow.
my student is about to like launch into a panic or anxiety attack, like I know it's coming because I know what that looks like because I've been through it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can look at them and say, all right, tell me 5 things you see. Tell me 4 things you can hear. Tell me 3 things you can smell.
Yes.
Reach out and touch 2 things. What's one thing you want to taste when you get home? like that 5 senses grounding. Because usually when I get to 4 and I'm like, those 4 things you can smell, that usually snaps my teenagers right up. They're like, because we're like, I don't want to smell these things that are around this school. Like, okay, and you're back. So now what happened that caused this to because that's really all you have to do is disrupt the system when you're in that state. If you give in to the system, you will stay in that state. But if someone comes along and does something to disrupt the system, my mom is really great at this. And she didn't even know, I don't even know that she knew how good she was at it. But I would start going down a thought spiral and I would start getting riled up. And she would just immediately just say something like off the wall, like out of the blue, like had nothing to do with what we're talking about. And just and I'd be like, what? And she's like, okay, now that you're back, come back for a minute because you were going way over here and you needed to come back over here. Let's talk about this rationally. So gratitude and grounding, and another grounding technique is singing. I sing, I dance around my house. I like to choreograph dances for myself to 80s music, like Prince stuff. I'll just dance around my house like Purple Rain or Beautiful Ones or any of that. And that whole soundtrack, you can just go crazy, literally. Let's go crazy, depending on if I need upbeat or slow. And I'll just dance around my living room or sing at the top of my lungs, sometimes well and sometimes not.
That helps
Anything
me
that
too.
disrupts negative flow of thoughts, which is not to say to ignore it. Don't ignore it. Go back to step 1. Don't ignore it, but also don't let it encompass you and take over.
I agree. Totally agree. Gratitude is so important into find grounding techniques. All the things that you shared are so important. And thank you so much for sharing that information with our audience so that they know what they can do. So if someone wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that? Can you share just information on how to reach you?
Yes. I have a website. It's tonilashaunmusic.com. ToniLashaun music.com. On Facebook and Instagram, Toni Lashaun Music. I'm on Twitter X as T Lashaun Music. I am on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. So yeah, I don't have a TikTok and I won't because nobody can if they didn't. So
True.
I'm not on the TikTok, but I am on Facebook and Instagram, YouTube, and always through my website. People can get in touch with me. Listen to the music. If you're looking for the music, it is on every streaming platform that you can possibly think of, but namely Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, Pandora, all the things.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on and just being real with our audience and being raw and giving us practical tips on what we can do to get through moments of stress to overcome. I just really appreciate you and I thank you for coming on. And if anyone's interested in a caring voice for you, helping you just listen and providing support to you, whatever you're going through, stress, loneliness, grief, life transitions, and everything in between, you can reach out to us at hearingvoiceforyou.com. And until next time, everyone, take care.
Bye.